All right, guys, sorry about this. We seem to be having some technical difficulties. However, we are going to hopefully jump right into our interview with Bree Cassidy from Body by Bree. Today's topic is time on tissue. So TOT, the only abbreviation you need to know. Just a reminder that Halftime's goal is to educate, empower, and uplift those not only just in the body contouring industry as professionals, but also potential clients, so they can choose a service provider that is well educated, as well as a treatment that is right for them. Okay, so this is a safe space. We aim to build community. And again, just a reminder that this is not a training session. This is just a live to discuss trending topics and provide you with more information that you can glean from and add to your profession. So once again, the topic is time on tissue. We're going to go ahead. Let's see if the invite is going to work today. Okay, here we've got it. All right, Bree Cassidy from Body by Bree. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Sorry about my technical difficulties. So we've got the much anticipated live today on the TOT. I just want to take a moment to introduce Bree Cassidy from Body by Bree. If you are in Toronto, you should know Bree. She is one of the pillars in the body contouring community. She is an OG, much like myself. She was introduced to body contouring and began years ago when body contouring was first introduced to Canada. So it's a real treat to have someone with so much experience here on the live with us today, talking and discussing about such interesting topic that is really looked over in many ways and in many trainings. So Bree, introduce yourself, tell us about yourself, your business, how you got started.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm very new to the live stream, so I'm super nervous. I wanted to have a glass of wine, but I refrained, so hopefully well. So my name is Bree Cassidy. I am the owner and lead technician of Body by Bree. I'm located in Pickering, Ontario, Canada, and I service mainly the Durham region, a little bit of the GTA as well. I am going on my 4+ year of business. I opened doors November of 2018. And I am just now starting to get into the training aspect and slowly launching a training program of my own while still servicing my clients. The whole concept of time on tissue kind of came from a personal experience that I had, not so much a positive one. So a little bit of a story time about myself. I had given birth to my second child. It was maybe early spring of 2018. I was looking for the cheat code. I wanted to lose the baby weight, but I had no interest in going to the gym and doing the legwork and the traditional steps of getting the baby weight. So I had, at the time, body contouring was not mainstream at all. It was something I'd never even heard before. I was on Groupon and I found a package for laser lipolysis. So I thought, okay, for the price, I don't know much about it. I didn't do any research at the time whatsoever. I was just excited that this could be, a way for me to lose the baby weight without having to put in the legwork. So I purchased the package. It might have been a couple $100, like not a big deal. I drove all the way out down to this fancy spa in Yorkville, so about an hour there, hour back. I show up, again, not knowing what to expect. I walk in. There was nobody there. They didn't provide any paperwork. There was no intake process, no consultation, nothing. They said, oh, hi, come on in. They didn't ask my name now that I think of it. So I go into the room. They hook me up to the machine, the laser pads, and I kind of like, this is different, and maybe I should be asking some questions, but I thought, I'm in trusting hands. This is, a fancy Yorkville spa. They know what they're doing. I'm in good hands.
You trusted the provider, right?
I did.
And that's why, we really aim for education, because we've all had that type of experience where it's like, okay, I guess like we trust that right? And then
it's Yorkville, so I mean the regular, I think the regular price per session for the 10-minute hookup time was at $250 Canadian. I probably paid $250 entirely for a package of, let's say, 5 or 6. So she hooks me up, turns the machine on, walks away, leaves the room, and I'm laying there like staring at the ceiling going, what in the hell is happening right now? I felt nothing. There was no noise, no buzzing, no sensation, no warmth, no cold, no tingling, nothing. If I didn't know any better, I wouldn't have known that the machine was even on. So I did see the red lights and they were flashing and doing their thing. So I thought, okay, something's happening, but I felt nothing. So 10 minutes later, she comes back into the room. She unhooks me. She says, all you got to do is do some cardio, drink your water, and carry on about your business. So I left, and it didn't sit well. And the whole way home, I was thinking, what the hell did I just pay for? Like, what was that? But I was too embarrassed to ask questions. And, you know, I was not an informed consumer. So a lot of it is on me. I take the onus for that. But it kind of sparked an interest because I was convinced that nothing had happened. And I mean, I wasn't expecting immediate results. I knew that it wasn't magical, but it was oversold and underdelivered based on the Groupon description. So it prompted me to do some research. Lo and behold, the first 5-10 minutes of laser lipolysis specifically is pre-treating. So I realized the pads were not on me long enough to actually be effective, hence why I probably felt no sensation whatsoever. At that point, a light bulb went off. I was annoyed, and I thought, well, I'm not going to drive all the way back to this place for, you know, a 10-minute hookup session when it's not on me long enough to be effective. So I called Groupon. I got a refund. I never called the place. I'm not one to, you know, jump on Google and do a negative review and all that kind of stuff. I just wouldn't recommend it. And if anyone asked, hey, have you tried this? I would tell them my personal experience. But again, it kind of fueled a fire, and I thought, there may be something to this. It does work. But we have to understand how long these the frequencies have to be in contact with the skin to determine the effectiveness. So that's kind of where my journey began. And I thought, well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it right. The only problem was at the time, as you know directly, there was no information out here. It was YouTube University, going to Google, you know, getting your own information. There was maybe a small handful of us that had initially taken the only training that was available out here, and a very good stepping stone. It was very basic, yes, but it allowed us, you know, the basic tools to kind of jumpstart into the industry, and kind of pave the way, almost pioneer, at least in Canada. We know that this has been around a much longer time in the States, but it's only about 4 or 5 years in Canada as far as I'm concerned. So that's kind of how I got started. And then as I dove into it and the more that I was learning and understanding, I thought, like, this really does work. There's no gimmicks here. This is not magical. It's not a, you know, oh, don't do that. Don't waste your money. It doesn't work. It's very effective. It just has to be done the right way. And we have to
it has to be
how we're using it.
Exactly. It's how we're used. And, you know, you hit the nail on the head there, where it was 5-6 years ago, you know, the only real documentation or research available on this type of treatment was all medical based, right? And not necessarily in regards to the practical implementation for our field, because that it was now really starting to transition and grow there, right? So all of that information wasn't as readily accessible. So, you know, kudos to you for doing your research, even on the laser lipolysis, to get that information, right? Because as we grow as body contouring specialists, and the experience that we have with our multitude of clientele and practical implementation, you know, we are able to kind of troubleshoot and really break down the science and get better accuracy with all this timing, you know, with the skin's barrier.
And this is something I talk about a lot when I come to you for my sessions, is, you know, the whole concept. Time on tissue is such a very basic, simple concept, but for whatever reason, it was not introduced to us, you know, when we first started. And if it was, it would have saved myself a hell of a lot of, you know, time.
Yeah.
That's right, trying to figure it out. Because I know that the two of us are now at the point of our career where we're not just in cruise control or pilot mode. We're now going above and beyond, outside the box. Okay, well, why are we using this? Is there, you know, does this help or hinder the treatment in terms of, you know, making our own conductive gels and things like that, and asking questions, as opposed to just doing this because that's what we were told to do. Yeah. Why are we doing it? How long are we doing it? How does it work? What's happening behind the scenes? And how does this all come together? So time on tissue, essentially, as basic as the concept is, it's the total amount of time in which a frequency or modality is in direct contact with the client's skin. So when we see these, what we call kind of kitchen sink treatments that look impressive, especially from an outsider looking in to the uneducated consumer, you see this provider doing, they're pulling out all the tools. We've got cavitation and wood therapy and EMS, and we're doing detox on.
So like 10 different modalities in one session, in an hour session.
And it looks impressive, but when you really break it down and think, okay, well, how long, if we only have 60 minutes, how are we doing all this in that one single session? And how effective is that? If we're only doing 5 minutes of this, 10 minutes of that, it doesn't make sense, right? So from my experience, I think that it's best to kind of focus in on 1 or 2, possibly 3 modalities, depending on what you're doing and the client's needs. And focusing on those as opposed to trying to, pull out all the guns in one shot and maybe now reducing the overall effectiveness, because we know that when we're changing from one modality or to another, we are losing some time, right? Every time that probe comes off of contact with the skin, we're losing time. So I think that it's something that would have been really, really helpful early on if it was, the basic introduction to the frequencies in particular. That probably would have helped us all early on. But nonetheless,
and that's the funny part. I'm like, I failed grade 9 science, and if I knew how much like biology and anatomy and understanding the body and again its receptiveness to frequency that I would need to know in my career, like maybe I would have mastered that, right? but this is the thing, is like we're all coming from different backgrounds where like that scientific knowledge and that expertise, although it's practical for our current business, it wasn't a history or an interest that we have, right?
And let's be honest, most of us, I don't know the numbers statistically, but I'd say a high percentage of us body contour specialists have no medical background whatsoever. At the very least, even a certificate in like PSW would be helpful.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of nurses transition as well, which is awesome. But even still, again, getting back to the concept of time on that tissue is, unless you receive that in your initial training, or it's like you've taken that, because the thing about training is we all trusted our trainers. We all trust our trainers to provide us, but there's so much information now out there, especially with the experience through our practical implementation and more studies that are being done, that unless people are really taking the initiative, because you can be a nurse and you can go for training and get very basic training, but you trust your trainer and you're thinking, okay, this is how it's supposed to be done. This is how I'm supposed to doing it. And this is one of the great things about getting together with other professionals and doing lives like this, is like how many people on this live before this point had heard about time on tissue. And now that Brianna is here and she's discussing it, I'm betting there's like light bulbs going off in everybody's head where it's like, oh my God, that makes sense,
And it's such a basic concept. Like it's almost self-explanatory, right? But it's something that has kind of gone under the carpet. And the first time I heard it was when I was doing my training with InMode technology for my medical grade machine, Body Effects. They sent a representative over, and that was her opening line. We sat down, she goes, the main concept of Body Effects and how this works is time on tissue. And I was like, whoa. That makes sense, right? But even then I didn't have enough experience, knowledge to really take it that much further. This is fast forward 4 years later, and now it's really coming into play and kind of at the forefront of at least my practice and my soon-to-be training program as well. So
awesome. Well, for those jumping on now, just to reiterate some of the things that we were discussing, is time on tissue is basically the amount of time a modality needs to be in direct contact. That's direct contact with the skin, with the tissue, for it to be effective in the treatment process. So Brianne recognized this when she went for laser lipolysis. She did her research. In conclusion, laser lipolysis needs to be on the tissue for longer than 10 minutes. I believe you called the first 10 minutes is just prep time, right?
Where with most frequencies, so we're talking about our, anything you plug into the wall, essentially, your radio frequency, your cavitation, EMS, anything that you are using as a frequency to either tighten the skin, break down the fat, build muscle mass, whatever the case may be. The first 5-10 minutes from my research, and it could vary depending on the frequency, is pre-treating. Yeah. So especially when we're using heat, you and I had talked about the effects of, using, for example, like our laser lipolysis belt. We kind of phased out the pads in my practice, at least, because
I know. I'm like,
that's,
that's one thing. I'm like, you guys, new body contouring specialists, listen, these only came in recently, okay? You won't know. Lying on those paddles are not fun.
So we had discussed, you know, using what is the effect of, let's say if we had started radio frequency with the laser lipolysis belt to kind of preheat that tissue evenly because it covers a larger area. And then we go in with the RF, we've already increased that, you know, internal temperature. So we kind of have a jump start where we're cutting down on the pre-treatment process.
Exactly.
So the treating process.
So again, you know, with the introduction of the time on tissue and talking about training ladies, learning how to, one, implement the time on tissue, two, how you can complement modalities to reduce that time on tissue, right? So, you know, one of the examples Brianne just gave is like when we've got the laser lipolysis on, you know, we are working on that preparatory phase on the tissue. So just as a background, guys, as we should all know, your body has a natural barrier to frequency treatments. This is one of the major reasons why we use a frequency conductor to help with the receptiveness of the frequency that we're using on the skin. Okay, so conductors help with the receptiveness, and then two, time on tissue. Again, preparing that tissue, getting that tissue to be more receptive. And it's just a part of our natural biology, just the way our tissue is designed to protect us, right? So as we're discussing right now is like being able to then, so we've got time on tissue, the basic time on tissue. So how long a specific modality needs to be on the skin to be effective or begin its effectiveness rather. And then two, understanding how to pair the frequencies so that you can then reduce the time on tissue from like the second, third modality that you're using, right?
Yeah. And if we can cut down on, like I said, that prep time, I'm not even sure if the industry has come to some type of standardization in terms of how long it's safe to treat an area with a frequency. From my research, 20, 30 minutes max. When I do things on myself, I might push it a little bit further, but on a paying client, about 20, 30 minutes max per area, per frequency is kind of the norm. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that seems to be kind of what we unofficially agree on. So if we only got 30 minutes to work with, and we're trying to maximize the effectiveness of the treatments while getting the client in and out, you know, as quickly as possible, so not on our bed for half the day, how do we, again, back to radio frequency with the heat modality, how do we cut down that prep time, maximize the treatment time, and getting the most out of that half-hour session? Somebody had asked me a while back, hey, you have a post-op LED or like an LED infrared light that I see you post-op. Have you ever thought of using that with your RF like skin type?
Absolutely.
And I thought, no, like if I'm not doing post-op, it's just sitting in the corner collecting dust. And in that moment, again, light bulb went off, and I thought, she's onto something here. That makes sense. If I have it, I might as well use it. I know that it's applying, you know, direct heat onto the area. That would, in theory,
maintain the
and bring that core temperature up to allow me to, you know, maximize the time when I'm doing the RF skin tightening.
And especially RF, like radio frequencies. So everybody who's on the call, students or body contouring specialists or clients, very basic, you know, knowledge. If you Google this, you will learn your skin needs to be at about 40 degrees for a period of 3 minutes for the effectiveness of the radio frequency. So what we're discussing right now is how to maintain that heat temperature while you move your RF around. Because if you're doing body contouring, as you know, when you start to move the RF to other areas, you're losing the heat. The body temperature is going to drop again from where that handle is being moved. So it's keeping that consistent temperature. And absolutely,
keeping it also to a relatively small area.
Exactly.
Is also something that I think that we are not overly.
Absolutely.
Mind, right? I mean, if we work, clients want to have the most area covered you know, for the least amount of money, right? And I get that all the time. Oh, can you throw in the love handles? Can we do the back rolls? No, because we have to keep it within a relatively small perimeter. Otherwise, if we spread out too much, that temperature is going to drop substantially. It's not going to be hot enough. Or if you're using, you know, cryolipolysis on the opposite spectrum to kill fat by freezing it, it's not going to maintain that required temperature to be.
And again, that plays into time on tissue. So one of the things you mentioned earlier on is, again, you know, the kitchen sink, everybody using everything on the body. You know, are you even getting the minimal effectiveness of each modality if you're cutting down each time to, you know, use every single one? But the other one is absolutely, you just touched on it, where it's like we're treating multiple areas. Right? And we're using the tummy, we're doing the tummy, we're doing the side, we're doing the back, you know. Are you even having enough time on tissue for that one area before you move into the next? And then we get into a whole nother topic, which we're not necessarily going to touch on today, guys, but how long treatment should be before you're completely overwhelming, like, the lymphatic system in the body, right?
Sure. And under that as well is, I typically will say, you know, 30 minutes per frequency per area. But that being said, I don't feel comfortable having a client lay on my bed for 4 hours while I'm doing
100%, 100%.
Don't know enough about that. Like, we have to be transparent, and I think there's a big lack of transparency in this industry. That's number 5 as well. We're not going to touch too much on that. But I think we have to maintain that at the forefront of our brain when we're treating clients, so that we are focusing in on, you know, the issue, not trying to oversell. Because from a client's perspective, that may look very impressive. I know for me, it does not. What am I doing wrong? I'm seeing these providers do these, you know, hour-long or 2-hour, 3-hour treatments using everything that they have in their repertoire, and thinking, what am I doing wrong? Like, that's not how I do my thing. Which is not to say that I'm right and they're wrong, or vice versa. But that's kind of what sparked this, you know, how long do we need to treat an area? And what's too long? You know, when is the body at its max and saying, okay, enough's enough, I'm all frequencied out for the day. So there's not enough information out there at this point for us to really, you know, touch on that too much. So that's something else that, you know, hopefully in the new year, as more information develops and we have more case studies in particular, because that's basically the only difference between those medical grade machines like the Cool Sculpting, Vela Shape, you know, Body Effects. They have that clinical, you know, testing and that
absolutely
that behind it. These machines that we're buying that are mass produced in China, we're just literally taking their word for it. Most of the time the manuals come, they're very loosely translated, if the manual at all, and you're kind of left to figure out on your own. And yeah, they work very similar. If you understand one, you could probably figure out the next machine. But the point is, we don't really know.
There's no guideline.
Like, there's no guideline. There's no documentation about safety, and, you know, as far as I'm concerned, there are no documented, you know, long-term side effects. But again, we have to kind of err on the side of caution with that. Reducing the total amount of time, but making every second count, essentially.
Absolutely. So working smarter and not harder, right? We're working smarter, and that's where it is coming back to understanding the science of the body, as well as the science of our equipment, right? And having that and ensuring that that is included in training, right? Very basic.
You are such a pioneer in this game, and I think that you humbly don't give yourself enough credit, because this is where this all came from for me personally, in following you more closely in the last year and seeing you step outside the box, challenging, you know, the norm and what we've been taught, and unlearning and relearning, and that has really inspired me to do the same, and kind of, you know, take it from autopilot mode to, okay, now
absolutely. I'm always a why person. You got to ask. And it's just like yourself when you went to your first treatment, and it's like you were nervous to ask questions because you trusted the individual, right? But I'm like, nah, yo, you're going to tell me that's going to melt my fat? How does this work? You're going to give me a booty with a vacuum? How?
And I think that as a consumer, whether you are informed or not, if you walk into a clinic, a home-based spa, whatever the case may be, the first question should be, how does this work? Absolutely. And if they say, like, I don't know, I just go like this and it just melts the fat. Okay, but what is happening behind the scenes? So now we have to go above and beyond. And if you as a provider, as a specialist, cannot clearly and concisely and articulately convey this to the client, there's
and that's about being confident in your abilities as well. So being able to have that support, and that's one of the reasons, you know, creating a community like this in the body contouring world where, you know, positive vibrations, right? Informational content. Whereas even if you don't get the answers that you're looking for, like I said at the beginning of the call, this is not a training call. You know, Bree and I both have our business for that. But it's to help you as body contouring specialists start to think outside of the box, right? Where it's like, oh my gosh, time on tissue, never thought about that. Light bulb, let me go do my research.
And I think to really earn that title of specialist, because I mean, speaking from my own personal experience, I threw that word in my title, in my bio, you know, right out the jump. And I knew damn well that I was not a specialist. I was nowhere near being a specialist. I'm just now giving myself the credit and saying, okay, like I own that title now. And I can confidently say that and put that in my bio. Because if anyone says, how does this work? Boom, there's your answer. How does that work? Boom, there's your answer. It's memory now. It's committed to memory because I have that understanding.
And you have the experience, right? You have that experience in the industry. You have that experience communicating with clientele. Like I know for myself with my online training, now I can talk about it to anybody because I've rehearsed and I've gotten comfortable with what we're saying, right? And that's what
ask me, how does cavitation work? You know, on my first month of when I opened my doors, you would have caught me like a deer in the headlights, and I would have been pulling something out of my butt to try to, you know, because I didn't at that time. It was just do this and it will do that. Okay, sure.
But now it's like, how does cavitation work? How long does it need to be on your skin? What are the after? You know, what do you do? Like that's. And that's, I think, about, again, coming into when body contouring was so new and there not being as much information available as there is now. And the reason why there is so much information available is because of the trailblazers in the past who have been doing it, right? Who have that experience.
Trial and error, for sure.
With regards, I know, Bree, you're a very busy woman. I'm going to open it up if anybody has any questions with regards to time on tissue, TOT. I really hope that we've been able to, you know, kind of inspire some more questions for you guys. Brianne, I know you're going to start doing training. We had talked about your consultations. Can you tell anybody on the call a little bit about that too, just in case they want to reach out to you and get some more information?
Yeah, for sure. I will admit I've been procrastinating launching the training program. A lot of it comes from, again, just my natural, the
perfection. It's going to be.
Well, the perfectionist as well. I just want to make sure that when I do launch it, what I put out there is the best quality that I could possibly offer.
Absolutely.
And my OCD plays a factor in the dragging my heels on that. So to start the launch, I decided I would offer up discovery calls for mentorship. That way we can book a 60-minute discovery call, whether you're here locally. I also, you know, am able to do it face-to-face for people that are in and around the area, but internationally as well, we can book a discovery call. We can go through whatever questions you have, whether it's technique, business marketing, setup, launching, insurance, whatever, anything that pertains to you elevating your business to the next level. That is what I'm here for and hope to be able to provide in the meantime before I actually get my shit together and launch my training.
And Body by Bree has been doing this for almost 4 years, right? And she has a beautiful studio in Pickering that is immaculate. You have set yourself up incredibly with regards to your professionalism. Not just your knowledge, but you really kind of set the bar for body contouring professionals. So again, reaching out, a plethora of knowledge available on these discovery calls, these consultations with Bree. Anything else you'd like to add today? Because I don't see too many questions coming up. So I think we did a good job on kind of explaining that topic.
No, I'm like I said, I'm new to the live thing. I join in on all yours. I'm like, okay, one day I'll get the content in front of the camera. It's just not my thing. I'd much rather provide information off the camera, but I think that it's worthwhile because people need to, to see it firsthand and to be relatable as well. So
Absolutely.
we're all in this together. I know that this industry is extremely secretive in terms of, my technique and my secret sauce and my method, but we have to remember we're dealing with people's bodies. We're not doing nails, we're not doing hair. We are dealing with people's bodies, and we're actually, in theory, changing the shape of their natural God-given body. And if we don't come together and standardize this to an extent, know that none of this stuff is actually truly accredited. We're not getting trained by Canadian Beauty College or, University of Toronto. Hopefully one day this does, breach that gap and it does have a mainstream curriculum. Until then, we have to come together and share information. Otherwise, someone's going to get hurt. And that's kind of my biggest fear in all this. And that's why I am an open book. Oh, we have one question. Do you offer single sessions to clients because they can be pointless for some body types? We do offer single sessions, but I think that's a red flag. I don't want to go too sidetracked, Anna. But just when we hear, I just want to try it once. That to me is the biggest red flag, because nothing that we do in here will be effective on a one-off basis. Just like you can't go to the gym once. You can't diet for one day. You can't go to the gym for one day and see results. So yes, we offer single sessions as a means to kind of try it and see if it is a good treatment for you, more along the lines of, is it tolerable? Is it comfortable? Because you can't go into a butt lift session and say, well, I'm just going to try one because I don't know if it's worth it for me, or if it's going to be a waste of money or whatever. My friend tried it once and she said, don't waste your money, it doesn't work. When I hear that, I'm already, my sensors are going off thinking, okay, I need to now manage this client's expectations. And that comes back down to, the transparency of the consultation
and your education, right? And your ability to communicate clearly, right, about the process, and create that environment. Because the more you know, the more you're going to be able to convince or coach an individual into purchasing more like a package.
Right? For sure. Aphrodite Sculptor just asked a good question. What is the max time on tissue? So again, we don't know for sure, because there isn't any documentation or clinical studies to say that X amount of minutes of blah, blah, blah is the max, per area, per body, whatever the case may be.
But I think we need to be conscious about overloading the lymphatic system.
And the body in general, there's so many different systems.
There's so many different systems, and what we're doing to the body, and how long that can be taken.
As well as what the client may or may not be doing after the fact, right? I would be more comfortable to extend the time on tissue with a client that I know 100% is going to go do the gym after and do the cardio, that I know walks in with a water bottle consistently. I'd be more willing to kind of, stretch the limits with that above and beyond the 30 minutes.
But again, I also think that, as we discussed this, reiterating as well that that's also the max time on tissue is also going to be different for each modality. 100%. So for example, just throwing it out there, max time on tissue for laser lipolysis is going to be extremely different than cavitation, right? And it just has to do with the invasiveness of each of these treatments. I do have another question. Does the technique change or time frame of the service depending on the use or depending on machine use? So we're talking about the machinery here. So I just want to touch on that, and then if you have a point for that, that's going to factor in on the measurements of your frequency, guys. So you have to understand that each frequency has a measurement. We know we see a lot about this in 80K, 40K, 60K for cavitation. Same goes for laser lipolysis. Your laser lipolysis pads are measured, I think it's by NM. I can't off the top of my head remember what that is, but it's the wavelength in what it's measured. So especially for laser lipolysis, when you have a higher frequency level, I think it's basic. The time on tissue, again, the preparation on the skin is still going to start with the basic, like 10 minutes, but the length of which it can be applied.
I guess with the intensity, where you're getting at too is, if you have your 80K cavitation on, 1 out of 20 power setting, that we know is not going to penetrate nearly as deep as if you have that 80K cavitation on 20.
Yes, but I think the time on tissue is, again, it's not, we're not talking about the penetration of or depth, guys. It's about like that preparation of the skin's absorbency of the frequency, right? And limiting the deflection of it and ensuring the quality of the treatment process.
She said, does machine use also factor, example, RF Cavi dual handle? Yeah, for sure. You do see like the vacuum and RF combination handles that can obviously, you know, kill two birds with one stone, so to speak. As for time and tissue, don't lift the probe away from the skin. Every time you lift the probe, every time the probe is not in direct contact with the skin, then yes, that is taking away time on tissue, whether it be milliseconds or seconds. It all does add up. I know with body effects, it's a foot pedal. So I would hold the probe onto the stomach or whatever area. I press the pedal. It heats to the temperature, then it cuts off. Once that energy stops, and that's a safety feature so it doesn't allow the skin to burn or overheat, I have to then lift my foot from the pedal, move the probe to the next spot. I am losing milliseconds in that. So from a 30-minute session, I might end up doing a total treatment time of maybe 27 minutes. So yes, that's relevant as well. Is that 3 minutes that that it wasn't in contact with the skin going to be dire or detrimental? Probably not, but something to consider for sure.
But it's also, again, guys, understanding, so everybody on the call, understanding that each modality works differently. So the question with regards to the dual heads, right? You still need to ensure that with the radio frequency portion that you're getting that skin to that 3 minutes at consistent heat temperature, right? You still need to ensure that the cavitation is on the body for that time on tissue to reduce the barrier for the skin, for the frequency to be productive for the treatment process for that specific amount of time. So again, guys, when you're talking about dual heads, because this is a new one, we didn't have dual heads back in the day. Dual heads is a new one. Again, understanding how each of those heads are working and their time on tissue. And again, the effectiveness of the treatment process. Because, for example, just again, the time on tissue aspect with radio frequency, you can be on there for 3 minutes getting that heat up, but your cavitation needs to be on there longer. So,
and with the, I'm not crazy about the RF vacuum combo, because you have to consider, as you said, what is the main function? Are we using the vacuum for contouring, draining? We know that the RF has to maintain a specific temperature, otherwise it's not effective at all. And if you are focusing more on the vacuum element and the RF is just kind of like an added bonus, well, that's great to tell the client. They think, oh, I'm getting a 2-for-1, right? But no, it's not actually reaching the, you know, the temperature that it needs to, because we're focusing more on using the, you know, the probe for the vacuum element. So definitely something to consider. We did not have that option starting out.
Right.
For sure. Someone asked if the belts, the lipo belts, are better or comparable to the pads. I myself found that I was losing a lot of time with the pads because of the wires. And again, probably my OCD plays into this. But, you know, taking them off the client and wiping them down and putting them back, there was some time being lost for that. And it's just annoying. And as any client will tell you, laying on those pads is not very comfortable. They're going to get up with the lines and the creases and all that. It's not the most comfortable. So I like the belt because it covers a larger area. There's no gaps in between. So, you know, with the pads, you're kind of creatively placing them to cover the area you want. With the belt, you get kind of the full, not 360, but 180.
I definitely converted. I'm not going to lie. I was skeptical. And as soon as I got it, I was like, I'm trying to get one for every single part of the body now.
Yeah.
Because the other thing, to you know, bringing it back to our subject matter with the time on tissue with vacuum or with, with laser lipolysis is many of you use the bands, right? And how frequently are they shifting? Are the handles or the paddles shifting rather while you're doing a booty treatment or while you're trying to treat another area, or just as the client breathes, how many of them are getting placed to pushed to a different area or pushed at a place, which then again reduces that time on tissue. So I'm definitely like, I've converted to the belt. I'm trying to buy like a whole wrap so I can have
For sure.
Vendors list and discount codes. I do include those on all the courses. I'm sure Brianne, through her consultations, can provide you with that information about, you know, reputable vendors and where to access this information for from as well. So,
does anybody else have any questions? I feel like I haven't been paying enough attention.
I know it gets distracting. Welcome to live. So it's like, oh my God.
I just want to make sure. Obviously, if you have any questions that were not addressed, feel free to jump into Anna or my inbox. We'd be more than happy to clarify anything that you're not sure of.
I will post. I'm going to post this live. I will tag Bree in it, so you'll be able to follow her account. She does provide some very informative posts for both body contouring specialists as well as clients in the post-op area as well. Excellent. Durham's first post-op, I believe, specialist over there. But any other questions coming up? If not, feel free to reach out to us, guys. Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
It was a pleasure. And I look forward to doing more and getting some interesting topics from students that we can also address.
Well, yeah, that's true. If anybody wants to have something specifically touched on, then maybe we can do that as well. Is laser light always done before cavitation?
We're not going to touch on that. We're going to, because that's getting into a different thing. That's process, yes, guys. So yes, don't.
There's links to Anna's training in the meantime.
Yeah. And Brianne can definitely touch on her technique as well. And you'll see a whole bunch of those phenomenal results, especially for arms. If you know me and you know my training, I hate doing arms, and Brianne has some wonderful options available.
I'll address, someone said, do I have training for post-op? No. Post-op is another great area that is extremely, what's the word I'm looking for to choose this? It's a big gray area that, again, none of us are probably the most equipped to be dealing with. So it's not something that I ever intend on training on, to be blatantly honest with you, unless I had a medical background. But DM me if you're looking for information. I can probably set you up with somebody that would be.
Absolutely. She would know. All right, guys. I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you again for joining us. Wonderful topic, wonderful discussion, lots of gems in this. So absolutely. Thank you so much.
I know.
Yeah, I know. I saved my coffee.
I don't even know how to get out of this, so I'm just going to let you.
All right. All right, guys. Thank you. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Bye.